All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. So, I am Andrew, aka Anti-Tinfoil Hat Mindgasms. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to critique more of James Lindsay's latest bullshit again. Of course, the former mathematician and professional mangler philosophy who endlessly demonizes the usual suspects like critical theory, critical race theory, Marxism, postmodernism, etc., and lumps them all together. And I criticize him a lot, including my series on his book called Cynical Theories with Helen Pluckrose. And this is about him literally gaslighting on the Great Reset and all that bullshit to do with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum that some of you have heard from before, which is the fucking whacko tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. So he's basically just Alex Jones at this point. There's almost no difference whatsoever. And I'm going to criticize his video that's literally entitled A Social Contract for the New World Order and go through all of the things that he gets wrong in here. There are so many that I might not even get to all of them without this being way too long of a video. So I'll I'm going to do some evil postmodern deconstruction on this giant pile of bullshit that he's about to shit out of his mouth.
Quick bullet-pointed summary of something important you need to understand about what's going on in the woke Marxist world today. And I'm talking
Even like right there, the wokeness and Marxism, those are not synonymous. I mean, probably woke people are more likely to be more sympathetic to Marxism, but probably none of them actually understand jack shit about Marxism in the same way that right wingers who criticize wokeness and attach it to Marxism don't understand anything about woke or about Marxism either.
right now about Klaus Schwab, the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, and his.
And this is the latest evil villain who's architecting this grand conspiracy that's attached to the Great Reset, which is this grand conspiracy theory about how everything is rich powerful elites are going to take over the world and no one's going to own anything except for Klaus Schwab and all of his communo-fascist Marxist critical race theorists, critical theorists, and they're all grooming children to be transgender, and they're all pedophiles and all this kind of fucking crazy shit. The only Alex Jones aspects that are missing are that the global elite are also shape-shifting lizard people and interdimensional child molesters, and they're kidnapping children to suck the blood.
His neo-communist push to transform the world.
Yes, Klaus Schwab is a neo-communist. He's one of the richest people in the world, and he is a neo-communist. I'm gonna literally I'm going to stop sharing this and go to this Klaus Schwab page here for a second. He is not a fucking neo-communist. He's like blending all these completely fucking paradoxical terms together and acting like they're actually similar because they're doing both of these things. Klaus Martin Schwab is a German engineer, economist, and founder of the World Economic Forum. He has acted as the WEF's chairman since founding the organization. Forum are not fucking neo-communists. This is this is like fucking ridiculous, man. All right, here we go.
A program of his vision.
Again, he's going to spout a whole bunch of fucking bullshit here and not stating evidence for any of it other than what he directly reads about Klaus Schwab's claims about what's supposedly going on in the Great Reset, according to James Lindsay. So anytime he mentions evidence for something, it's evidence for something that he's not actually claiming, and Klaus Schwab is claiming something different.
He has this stakeholder capitalism vision that is a Leninist, Maoist program to remake society, a top-down, bottom-up, inside-out cultural revolution to remake society according to his vision. But I want to frame this today in terms of the classic
he's a
piece of
Leninist,
leftism,
bro.
the classic
A super fucking rich guy, and these evil cabal of rich people are literally fucking Leninists, bro. Yeah, that makes total fucking sense.
article of leftism, which is social contract theory, which goes back to Jean-Jacques Rousseau in 1762. The same social contract theory
that's not a leftist thing. That's more of an Enlightenment classical liberal thing, and James Lindsay is supposedly all about classical liberalism.
led to the bloody French Revolution, the same social contract theory that inspired Hegel and Marx going forward philosophically. And now we're going to read very explicitly in Klaus.
No. It did not inspire Hegel and Marx. Again, he's doing this thing that he always does where he acts like Hegel and Marx were in sync with each other, where in reality, Hegel and Marx were actually in opposition to each other. Marx's dialectical materialism was literally flipping Hegel's dialectic on its head, and Marx was a materialist, but Hegel was more of an idealist, and Hegel was James Lindsay has mentioned before that Marx was a young Hegelian. He was, but then he wasn't. And then he turned against the Hegelianism, which is why so much of his writing is actually criticizing and turning some of Hegel's ideas on their head.
Schwab's 2022 book, The Great Narrative. I'm going to go ahead and read, because I want to keep this short, I'm going to go ahead and read pretty quickly through this, but I want you to understand that Klaus Schwab fully intends to redefine the social contract under his vision. That's his objective. Tools like ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance metrics and accounting, sustainable development goals, so-called SDGs, and social emotional learning as a model of education are going to be the tools by which he wants to remake the social contract itself through his top-down public-private partnership, his bottom-up youth movement in the broader...
Wait, how can it be top-down and bottom-up simultaneously? Like, which is it? You have to pick one.
Inside-out cultural revolution that he's trying to inspire. I'm going to read directly a number of paragraphs from...
Not trying to inspire a cultural revolution. That's fucking bullshit.
His 2022 book, The Great Narrative, where he lays this out.
Let me read the description of that Klaus Schwab says about stakeholder capitalism. It sounds like this naive liberalism vision, like not this fucking maniacal conspiratorial way of running the world and controlling everything that everyone owns. This is according to what it says here on the description in Google Books, reimagining our global economy so it becomes more sustainable and prosperous for all. Our global economic system is broken, but we can replace the current picture of global upheaval, unsustainability, and uncertainty with one of an economy that works for all people and the planet. So yeah, like I said, it just sounds like kind of naive liberalism and wanting to change the economic system, or I don't know, maybe naive progressivism so it works for more people. And I think that's a good idea in theory, but I don't see how all of this fucking tinfoil hat shit that he's about to get into in a hell of a lot of detail comes into it.
His thinking is this year. And he starts off by framing inequality as the major driver for change. He starts off by, for the part that we're going to cover here, he starts off by quoting UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And he says this, he puts it, quote, inequality defines our time. He then goes on to say, its manifestations are so multifaceted and have reached such proportions to address that it demands nothing short of a redefinition of our social contract. Now, I could go into social contract theory and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, but Klaus does it for us. So we'll just continue reading a few paragraphs down. He says, rising concerns about inequality and the profound sentiment of dissatisfaction, if not anger, that it provokes will prompt many societies around the world to redefine the terms of their social contract. Now, imagine, if you will, that you have an organization that funds a lot of woke Marxism, a lot of this identity politics that makes people angry.
It's so fucking annoying how he endlessly lumps all of these terms together. Woke Marxism. Yes, there are similarities, but they're not the same thing. Marxism is not woke. A lot of woke people, like, they're more sympathetic to Marxism, as I said, but they probably don't fucking understand jack shit about Marxism in the same way that right-wingers who criticize Marxism do. It's not like wokeness is a synonym for Marxism. And if you study Marxism, there's nothing woke about Marxism itself. It's more like people, it's more appealing to woke people because it sounds more woke than other types of economic theories, and people assume that Marxism is this political theory, whereas in reality Marxism mostly actually wrote about economics. So there's so much bullshit.
Angry and makes them perceive inequality and injustice, like the World Economic Forum and all of its various partners. And then that same
Also, well, like, what would be so bad about quote unquote rewriting the social contract? There never literally actually was a physical social contract anyway, and perhaps it should change with time, and perhaps the economic system should change across time, unless you're like an anarcho-capitalist and you think that the laws of economics are equivalent to laws of the universe like physics, which anyone who has half a brain knows is fucking bullshit.
organization happens to point out, look how angry people are, look how dissatisfied people are because of the inequality that we are actually stoking. Huh. What if that same organization was creating gigantic wealth inequality by creating policies, say,
And of course, like, he's not saying, but he's implying that criticizing inequality is bad. Now, this can go overboard for sure, and a lot of people go too far with this, but he hasn't said how exactly this is the case yet, and I don't see why it's inherently the case that criticizing inequality is bad.
through COVID-19 that funnel tons and tons of money to
Oh
the
my
big
God.
corporations like Amazon.
So see, this is where he's going off script. He's not reading from Klaus Schwab anymore, and he's doing this whole fucking conspiratorial narrative. That's part of his grand conspiratorial narrative too. The people who are promoting the Great Reset and trying to engineer the Great World Order are not only pedophile grooming children to be trans, they're also doing a whole bunch of COVID restrictions and forcing people to wear masks and get vaccinated and locked down and shut down the world economy because this is apparently somehow good for rich people, even though it makes everyone lose money. And this is connected to trying to engineer the new world order and the Great Reset through Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum.
On that did wonderfully well through the pandemic while all of the smaller things get squashed and destroyed. So you're creating social inequality, you're creating wealth inequality, and then you're saying, look how much inequality there is. This demands a complete redefinition of our social contract. We need an entirely new society under the
So
left.
it wasn't fucking Klaus Schwab and those of his ilk who decided to do like COVID lockdowns and shut down the economy and prevent people from going to work and all that shit. There are verifiable, there are justifiable objections that people can have to those things, I think. But like, this has nothing, these things specifically have fucking nothing to do with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. James Lindsay is using it as an example of the type of things that the type of things that rich and powerful people supposedly want to do, because he's mind reading and he can apparently read these people's minds, and he knows that they're connected and they engineered specifically all the COVID shit.
Leftist terms defined over 2.5 centuries ago by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Broadly defined, Klaus says, the social contract refers to the often implicit set of arrangements and expectations that govern the relations between individuals and institutions. Put simply, it is the glue that binds us, our societies, together. Without it, the social fabric unravels. The growing general recognition is that the social contract in many countries around the world is broken, and that its multiple elements, quote, from cradle to grave, need to change. What Jean-Jacques Rousseau did when he framed out the social contract, since Klaus hasn't said this, and it's important to understand, is that the social contract is this broad contract we all agree to by virtue of being citizens of a nation, or citizens of the world, or whatever you would want to think of it. Klaus would say of the world. I don't think global citizens exist, and they should not exist. We should be national citizens. But at any rate, citizens.
I don't know what he means by that. Is he implying that that shouldn't be a case because it would mean that there's a one world government that's controlling everything, and that's the only way that you can be a citizen of the world? Is that what he means? I don't know.
In some way, agree to certain rules of propriety, certain rules of law, certain rules of other things in order to make society function better. In other words, as Rousseau had it, that you willingly give up some of your freedom to increase overall freedom, which sounds like a weird magic trick. Decrease your freedom to have more freedom. Doesn't make sense.
See, again, he's going off script here and no longer quoting Klaus Schwab and acting as if this is actually what Klaus Schwab is advocating for, whereas this is just his fucking tinfoil hat conspiratorial shit, as if Klaus Schwab himself said and literally thinks that he wants to do what he's describing there, whereas in reality, Klaus Schwab said no such thing. And no one knows what he actually thinks about this because James Lindsay and no one else can read people's minds.
This is what he's actually talking about doing. We're going to have to give up a lot of our freedom.
This is what he's actually. How the fuck do you know that this is what he's actually talking about doing? This is total fucking conjecture, guessing on your part.
Own nothing and be happy, Klaus tells us in his 2016 World Economic Forum Great Reset advertisement video he put out.
Own nothing and be happy. Okay, well that's bad if that's the case. But it's also not this. It's also like this is a major thing that people don't understand when they go around promoting this bullshit about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, that they assume that Klaus Schwab is like the fucking king of the world and he can just make these things happen. I don't gamble, but I'll bet like a fucking $1 million that it's not going to be the case that no one owns anything at least anytime soon. And I'm pretty fucking sure that that's never going to be the case at all. And like, even if Klaus Schwab wants to do this to the extent that James Lindsay is claiming he does, I highly doubt that he has anywhere near the level of power for that. I'm sure he's a rich and powerful person, but there's no one that's like the king of the fucking world that can just make these things happen. That's not gonna fucking happen, man. This is just 100% fucking paranoia.
So you'll give up your, say, rights to property ownership, and we'll have more freedom as a result of not having to own anything.
That's not gonna happen.
Owning things would mean taking care of things,
That's
right?
not gonna happen, dude. Not gonna fucking happen.
Might do, or you might not do, but either way, it limits you. For decades, Klaus tells us, pretty much everywhere, the social contract has slowly and almost imperceptibly evolved in a direction that has forced individuals to assume greater responsibility for their individual lives and economic outcomes. Doesn't that sound terrible? For decades, the social contract has almost imperceptibly evolved in a direction that has forced individuals to assume greater responsibility for their individual lives and economic outcomes. And this is the thing Klaus has a problem with. It says,
yeah, but you're interpreting that the opposite way with the opposite tone of the way that you just read it in the book. And you referenced it yourself earlier when he was talking about inequality. It's obviously in connection to what he was talking about in terms of inequality. There's more inequality, so people have to take more responsibility and shit. And it's not just like the way that James Lindsay interpreted it just sounds like this stereotypical conservative. Oh no, it's bad for people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I guess you better pull yourself up by your bootstraps now. And the evil, rich, powerful person wants you to not do that. Aren't they just fucking bad? That's like, he's totally just missing the point that he said like fucking less than 5 minutes ago in his own video of the paragraph that he quoted previously. Obviously it's connected to where he's talking about inequality. He's not like doing this Marxist shit like, okay, renounce all property ownership and this is going to be a good thing. Like that's not what's fucking happening here, man.
He says needs to change. People have been expected to take more and more responsibility for themselves and their lives, and this, he says, has led to large swaths of the population, most evidently in the low income brackets, to conclude that the social contract was, at best, being eroded, if not in some cases, breaking down entirely. This, by the way, is the exact same economic materialist agitation that Karl Marx tried to put forth in his idea of class antagonism.
So like most people, I'm sure James Lindsay is a fucking materialist in the same way too. If you asked him if he's philosophically a materialist, he's all a bit like, he's a militant atheist. He literally wrote a book about how God is a dead idea. I forget the title right now, but he's such a militant atheist that he wrote a book that's all about how God is an intellectually dead idea. And like most militant atheists, he also is into scientism, as if like science and logic and rationality can fix all of these problems. So, like, I don't see the point of this.
The fundamental reasons underpinning the loss of faith in our social
I'm gonna go
contract, the
back a
exact
second.
same economic materialist agitation that Karl Marx tried to put forth in his idea of class.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was the point I was making, that James Lindsay is a materialist, like just as much as Marx was, because philosophically speaking, most people who are all like new atheists and into the Enlightenment and all that kind of stuff, they, at least in terms of consciousness and in terms of reality, like epistemology, they're materialist. Like, what exists in the material world is what exists. There's nothing in other extra metaphysical realms or something like that. That's why some militant atheists and some non-militant atheists, like me, for example, believe that there is no God. That's not one of the reasons why I don't believe in God, but that's one of the reasons that materialists believe that there is no God.
Class antagonism. Today, the fundamental reasons underpinning the loss of faith in our social contracts coalesce around issues of inequality, the ineffectiveness of most redistribution policies, a sense of exclusion and marginalization, and a general sentiment of unfairness. I think that's funny. The ineffectiveness of most redistribution policies is the cause of resentment and dissatisfaction. Really, your own leftist policies, which don't work, aren't working, and it causes people to be dissatisfied.
What are you fucking talking about? They weren't leftist policies. They were neoliberal policies. The economic policies that he's talking about, like promoted by the World Economic Forum and major institutions like that, are neoliberal economic policies. They're not leftist policies at all. So it's definitely not the fucking case that leftist policies have caused problems that Klaus Schwab wants to fix with leftist policies that he's saying. He's not even getting concretely into describing what are leftist economic policies. He's not saying anything like, you know, socializing the economy entirely, or, you know, raising minimum wage or price controls or any leftist economic policies at all. He's not advocating for a single one of them. And the currently existing economic system, especially if you're talking about America or something like that, most economies in so-called first world or Western countries run on neoliberal economic systems. So it is neither an economic system, a leftist economic system that led to this point, and it is also not leftist economic policies that Klaus Schwab is advocating for at all either. So there is No point whatsoever here, and no points for validity.
But you're going to say it's somebody else's fault. Again, the same classic Marxist
That's
deflection
not
of
Marxist.
responsibility and demand for more ability to keep
Oh
doing
my
what they're
God.
doing. This is where bloody revolutions like the Bolshevik Revolution and the French Revolution ultimately come from. Not just these
So he's implying these kind of ideas lead to bloody revolution, even though he's not actually describing any leftist ideas at all.
failures of policy, but also deflecting the blame onto some scapegoat.
You mean
It
like
is
how
for
you
this
were doing?
reason,
This
Klaus
entire
tells us,
video is about how he's deflecting blame to the scapegoat of Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and all of the usual suspects that he doesn't say the full conspiracy theory all at once in this video, I don't think anyway, but if you look at all of what he's talking, he connects all of this shit to like fucking critical theory, critical race theory, postmodernism, Marxism, the Frankfurt School, etc. All of the usual philosophical suspects who he strawmans and demonizes, who are
that
also
many
scapegoats.
citizens have begun to denounce a breakdown of the social contract. See, lots of people are doing this already. You should join in. Propaganda.
I mean, like what
Expressing
you're
more and more
saying.
forcefully a general loss of trust in institutions and leaders. That's not why we're losing trust in institutions and leaders. It's because they're implementing terrible, failed leftist policies in line with the Great Reset.
Okay, again, oh, he did say the Great Reset there. So again, that's not he's disagreeing with Klaus Schwab there and saying you're wrong about the reason behind it. So he read the quote from Klaus Schwab himself there, saying that it's not leftist policies that are the reason. You're claiming that there's the reason, but you have not provided any evidence for why it's leftist policies that have caused these problems.
But nevertheless, same trick. Propaganda. In some countries, this widespread exasperation has taken the form of both peaceful and violent demonstrations. In others, it has led to electoral victories for populist and extremist parties, framing out the resistance as extremists and as populists to kind of draw parallels to things like the Nazis. Whichever form it takes, in almost all cases, the establishment's response has been left wanting, ill-prepared for the rebellion and out of ideas and policy levers to address the problem. Although they are complex, the policy solutions do exist, as we will see in Chapter 3, and broadly consist in adapting the welfare state to today's world by empowering people and by responding to the demands for a fairer social contract. Over the past few years, several international organizations and think tanks have adjusted to this new reality and outlined proposals on how to make it happen. The pandemic has marked a turning point by accelerating this transition. It has magnified and crystallized the issue and made a return to the pre-pandemic status quo impossible. Which particular form might the new social contract take? There are no off-the-shelf, ready-to-use models because each potential solution depends on the history and culture of the country to which it applies. Sounds very Marxist. For obvious reasons, a good social contract for China will be different from one
How
for
does
the
that sound very Marxist? And also, is he saying that the world cannot go back to the way it was, and the COVID policies were a way of expanding welfare, and that's how these are leftist policies? He still hasn't gotten to the part where Klaus Schwab is actually promoting the expansion of welfare through COVID-esque type of policies. He's just saying this is what has happened, and this is what some people have said about it. And it's not and that is kind of a Marxist thing to just describe things, because contrary to popular belief, Marx did not actually advocate for many political positions at all. He mostly just did boring, dry economic theory in a descriptive way. So that's the only way it sounds Marxist. It doesn't sound Marxist in this stereotypical revolutionist, we need to start this violent, bloody revolution and create the new world order with the Great Reset, man. That kind of shit.
for the US, which in turn will not resemble one for Denmark or Nigeria. However, they could all share some common features and principles, the absolute necessity for which has been made ever more obvious by the social and economic consequences of the pandemic crisis to stand out. One, a broader, if not universal, provision of social assistance, social insurance, healthcare, and basic quality services. In other words, social.
Oh no, socialized healthcare. Yeah, that's a leftist policy, but this is the equivalent of like the fucking Great Reset and no one will own anything and a new world order and all this kind of shit. No, many countries also already have socialized welfare programs, and there's no fucking chance that people are going to stop owning property. I live in Canada with an evil socialized healthcare system that everyone agrees is good, to the extent that even far right-wing extremist conservatives never even mention getting rid of the socialized Canadian healthcare system. And like, I'll suck my own dick if it's ever the case that no one is allowed to own property in Canada, and that's not the case anywhere else that has a socialized healthcare system either. So this is just a fucking lazy, slippery slope argument that he's not even saying directly. He's just implying it. So it's incredibly intellectually lazy, and he's not providing any reason or evidence whatsoever to the claim that this is the sort of thing that's going to happen as a result of, like, oh no, expanded wealth care or expanded healthcare. The result is going to be that people don't own property in the Great Reset, bro. Fucking bullshit.
Socialism. And two, a move toward enhanced protection for workers in the form of mandatory benefits, a minimum decent wage, and help to adapt to the disruptive effects of innovation. In other words, socialism.
People can query about the different definitions, but that's, well, like, that sounds much more like social democracy, like what we have here in Canada. But some type of, you could say small s socialist policies for sure. But again, like, uh, welfare and healthcare and minimum wage. These are things that many countries already have, and he's saying that if other countries have this is going to lead to the Great Reset and a new world order and people not owning property anymore. That is completely fucking unfounded and based on no evidence whatsoever.
In addition, a critical aspect of a new social contract pertains to liberties and freedom, at least in democratic countries. There's a growing concern that the fight against this pandemic and the future ones, that's ominous, will lead to the creation
Oh
of
no.
permanent surveillance societies, an issue explored in more detail in the next section. That's ominous. Collectively redefining the terms, he says, of our social contracts is an epical task. That's what we're here for. That binds the substantial challenges of the present moment to the hopes of the future. As Henry Kissinger reminded us, quote, the historic challenge for leaders is to manage the crisis while building the future. Failure could set the world on fire. End quote. While reflecting on the contours we think a future social contract might follow, we ignore at our peril the opinion of the younger generation who will be asked to live with it. Their adherence is decisive, and thus to better understand what they want, we must not forget to listen. Of course, how convenient if you, say, adopted Apollo Freirean model, where what you do is you position yourself as a facilitator to agitate the youth in a particular direction, say through social emotional learning. So you agitate them, and then you tell them the correct interpretation of what they're experiencing, the one you want
You mean like exactly what you're doing right now?
them to have, and then you force everybody to listen to what they say after you've brainwashed them to say what you wanted them to say in the first
Of
place.
course, so again, he's going off script here, and he's implying, actually, he's pretty much directly saying that Klaus Schwab and the people at the World Economic Forum are brainwashing people into this false reality where they will want and accept all these evil socialist policies like healthcare, welfare, minimum wage, and that will apparently engineer the fucking Great Reset, bro, and no one will own property and there will be a new world order. Fucking bullshit, man.
Wouldn't that be an interesting little circle to walk around? This is all the more significant because the younger generation is likely to be more radical in its demands and refashioning our social contract. The pandemic has upended their lives, and a whole generation across the globe will be defined by economic insecurity and climate anxiety. Yeah, thanks, Klaus. They will bear these scars forever. Already, the millennials, at least in the Western world, are worse off than their parents in terms of earnings, assets, and wealth. They are less likely to own a home or have children than their parents were. Now, another generation, Gen Z, is entering a system that it sees as failing and that will be beset by longstanding problems revealed and exacerbated by the pandemic. As a college junior put it, citing the important sources here, quote, young people have a deep desire for radical change because we see the broken.
Citing important sources, and you're also citing the important zero sources or non-existent sources that you have cited so far for your arguments against what Klaus Schwab is saying and for your implications of what he wants to happen and for your total fucking predictions that you're pulling out of your ass about what will happen.
Path ahead. How will this generation respond? He asks. By proposing radical solutions, often radical action, to prevent issues like social inequalities from worsening or the next disaster like climate change from striking.
So here, all that Klaus Schwab is saying is the younger generation, Generation Z, wants these more radical economic policies to happen because they're experiencing more inequality. There's nothing nefarious whatsoever about what Klaus Schwab is saying right here.
The young generation see both as two facets of the same coin. Intergenerational inequality. Sounds super Marxist, but okay.
How does it sound super Marxist to describe how there is more inequality? Yeah, it's an evil Marxist thing to describe how younger generations have more inequality, bro. That's fucking ridiculous.
It will most likely demand a radical alternative to the present course because its members are frustrated and dogged by a nagging belief that the current system has failed them and is fractured beyond repair.
So it sure sounds here like Klaus Schwab is saying this is what the younger generation, Gen Z, is going to do. It sure doesn't sound like he's saying this is what me and my bros at the World Economic Forum want to happen, and this is what we're going to do at all.
Imagine if you ran an organization fostering exactly that thought, exactly the conditions that lead young people to believe that, and then you use it. And then you say we have to listen to the
What the
people
fuck are
that you
you
facilitate.
talking about? The World Economic Forum is doing that? They're very much not doing that, not even in these quotes that you've read by Klaus Schwab himself.
Into that view. Imagine. As a result, youth activism is increasing worldwide, being revolutionized by social media that fosters mobilization to an extent that would have been impossible before. You can hear the salivation for the revolution right there. It's possible now. Yeah. It takes many
What are you
different.
talking about? He's being descriptive, not prescriptive. What are you're totally fucking just adding this tone about how Klaus Schwab wants this to happen. He's totally just fucking pulling this out of his ass and acting like this is what Klaus Schwab wants, whereas he's just being he's being descriptive.
Different forms, ranging from non-institutionalized political participation to demonstrations and protests, and addresses inequalities in a multifaceted manner, seeing issues as diverse as income inequalities, climate change, economic reforms, gender equality, and the LGBTQ rights as part of a more general inequality problem. The young generation is firmly at the vanguard of social change. There is little doubt that it will be the catalyst for change. Throughout the rest of this book, he talks about how the youth are going to demand compliance with ESG standards, sustainable development, resilience, all of these buzzwords that they've now packaged up communism into a new box under their.
Oh, it's not fucking communism. And again, he's being descriptive. And Klaus Schwab is saying this is what the younger generation is going to want to happen, and it's what they're going to try to do. He's at no point saying this is what I want, and this is what me and my bros at the World Economic Forum are doing. And this is like none of those terms that he just said have anything to do with communism. It's like identity politics and wokeness, which again people like that are more sympathetic to communism, but communism has nothing to fucking do with wokeness.
Their control and direction. And he says, well, the youth are going to demand an entirely new social contract. that demands these changes. They are going to be firmly at the vanguard of social change. This is a youth movement in alignment with either Mao Zedong or Herbert Marcuse, trying to radical.
The fuck are you talking about? This has nothing to do with Mao Zedong or Herbert Marcuse. Nothing that Klaus Schwab said there is anything even remotely similar to how radical Mao Zedong was. Like, he was like he's probably the most radical fucking evil, maniacal, mass murdering communist in human history. And Marcuse is nowhere near as bad as that. But he also, sure as fuck, did not advocate for anything anywhere near as bad as Mao Zedong. He was a Marxist, and he was part of the critical theorists in the Frankfurt School who were more radical than past Marxists, to the point that Adorno and Horkheimer, in their book called The Dialectic of Enlightenment that I made a video about, literally thought that the Enlightenment was a mistake and it was inherently anti-Semitic. But none of them ever advocated for anything resembling like violent revolution and murdering a whole bunch of people and altering history, mass genocide, etc. All the fucking evil shit that Mao Zedong did. No, Marcuse is nowhere fucking near the level of evil that Mao Zedong was. He was mostly a fucking harmless philosopher doing a lot of intellectual masturbation about philosophy, which philosophers tend to do, which I think is interesting, even if I disagree with radical opinions like that the Enlightenment was a mistake.
Radicalize and create the new sensibility, the new rationality, the new morality. He actually talks about that in this book too, that we need a new morality. And we're going to find it largely in this younger generation to whom we must listen, who's been facilitated into this belief that the world is broken beyond repair.
Okay, if James Lindsay is claiming that Klaus Schwab says that in this book, that we need to listen to the younger generation about how all of these radical things that are going to happen and we want to happen. If that's the case, then that's not good. But still, even if it is the case, Klaus Schwab and his ilk do not have enough power. They're not fucking kings of the world. He's not the king of the world. He can't just like engineer fucking Maoism or some shit like you're fucking implying. That's fucking wacko crackpot insane bullshit, man. And if he tried to do that, no one would let him fucking engineer Maoism in the fucking New World Order and stop allowing people to own property and all this kind of fucking shit. That's why all this fucking Great Reset shit is 100% fucking unfounded paranoia.
So this is the program of social change that Klaus Schwab is recommending, that the World Economic Forum is attempting to force upon us. And you see the mechanism, tools like social emotional learning.
Okay, so how is the World Economic Forum doing this? I don't see any evidence so far, even in Klaus Schwab's own writing, that the World Economic Forum is trying to engineer this fucking literal Maoist agenda, as James Lindsay was describing it, and engineering the Great Reset and preventing people from being allowed to order property anymore, and engineering a new world order, and pedophile grooming children to be transgender and forcing people to get vaccinated, and all of this attached bullshit that he does, along with demonizing critical theory, Marxism, critical race theory, postmodernism, the Frankfurt School, and etc. God damn.
Learning and ESG and sustainable development goals are the weapons that they're using to transform the society, to create a new Rousseauian style leftist social contract under their control.
No, that's not gonna fucking happen, man. They're not gonna. Yeah, Klaus Schwab and his bros at the World Economic Forum are going to control the world's entire fucking economy, bro. Do you know what has to fucking happen for that to be the end result? This is fucking bullshit. Like, even if they want to do this, and they're doing this really well detailed plan that James Lindsay is saying they do, but he doesn't actually provide any evidence for in this video, they don't have enough fucking power to do that. Maybe they have way too much fucking power. I'm sure that's true. And I'm sure they have way too much money too. But I would bet $1 million fucking dollars that none of this shit is actually going to fucking happen. It's not going to fucking happen, man. Like, fucking crazy.
Control, where they are the stakeholders and you are the serfs.
Yeah, bro.
Thanks for listening. I hope this helps you understand more of what's going on in the world around us.
Oh. Okay, so that was fucking terrible bullshit. As I said, you see, like, this is what tinfoil hat wacko conspiracy theorists like James Lindsay do. They they read some stuff and then they add a whole bunch of their own interpretations of what the person means, what they want to do, and what they're going to be able to do that are totally fucking unfounded. Like, the biggest point to me is that, like, oh my God, this is not going to happen. There's not going to be a fucking great reset. There's not going to be a new world order. There's not going to be global welfare. There's not going to be globalized social health care. There's not going to be a global minimum wage. And there's sure as fuck not going to be some fucking violent revolution and some violent Maoist communist revolution with all of the attached things like fucking mass genocide and erasing history and all like fucking setting up gulags and all of this other terrible fucking shit. Like, this is the most important point to understand how about how fucking crazy this is. Everyone knows how fucking crazy the Great Reset theory is, and he only mentioned that term one time, like as a way to smuggle it in and make it sound like I'm just guessing that this is what he's doing. I'm not doing what James Lindsay says is doing here and reading his mind, but it sure seems like he only mentioned that once and mentions Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum as a new way of promoting the Great Reset that Alex Jones has been talking about for fucking decades and still hasn't happened and will never happen. So, as usual, James Lindsay is a fucking crackpot promoting tinfoil hat conspiracy theories about shit that is not happening and is not going to ever fucking happen. So let me go through just the entire conspiracy theory as a whole that he never spells out all at once. James Lindsay's grand conspiracy theory is that Klaus Schwab and his bros at the World Economic Forum like basically control the fucking world already, and they have enough money and power that they are trying to engineer and they are going to engineer a great reset, a new world order through pedophile grooming children to be transgender and forcing people to get vaccinated, wear masks, and do all the COVID restrictions and shut down the economy, which will end up being the point where we will live in a global Chinese-esque social credit system, and no one is going to own anything, and just Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum will control the entire fucking world. That's how much of a fucking crackpot tinfoil hat bullshit insane conspiracy theory James Lindsay is promoting. All right, so I hope you appreciated me doing my evil postmodern deconstruction of what he was saying there. Thanks for watching this. Check out my last video yesterday about Joe Rogan speculating that Jeffrey Epstein was a CIA or Mossad spy, which I think is ridiculous because obviously all this stuff associated with Jeffrey Epstein is fucking terrible enough, but that part seems to be highly fucking unlikely. So check that out too, and probably put out a tremor clip from one of my podcasts next. And like I said yesterday, hopefully this weekend, Dusty and Chris and I, who I often do movie chats with, will be talking about the documentary called Reversing Roe, about the decades-long process that led to Roe versus Wade being overturned recently, and about how it was never even a political issue until Christian evangelicals made it a political issue for Republicans through the moral majority and people like Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, going back decades. I think it was like back in the 70s or 80s. And yeah, so check all that out and click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. Click the subscribe button and click the like button. Share this everywhere to show how James Lindsay is spreading a whole bunch of fucking bullshit misinformation and gaslighting people and profiting off of it. And yeah, check out my link for my Patreon page, which is in the description of the video. As always, if you give me $10 a month, you can vote on future books, movies, and other topics that I will discuss both by myself and with others, and any other amount is greatly appreciated, of course. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And James Lindsay is promoting a whole bunch of complete fucking bullshit, whacko conspiracy theories like the fucking Great Reset, and there's going to be a fucking new world order and all this fucking bullshit. Don't listen to him. He's a fucking intellectual fraud. All right. Thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time.